When you're moving into a new home, there's such a huge amount of pressure to have everything ready all at once within the first month. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. When I first started this channel last year, after we had just moved in roughly a year ago, I started to kind of feel the same pressure. Like every time I recorded a new video, I had to have something new to show. And social media is basically full of these haul videos, and it's all about rapid consumption. And when you consume a lot of this content, I certainly do, when you consume a lot of, let's say, interior design content, everything looks ready and it's already perfect. And you don't really drill down into at what phase of the process that person is at. Maybe they've spent 20 years getting their house to look a certain way. The snippets that you see obviously don't reveal that. So once you move in, there's this immediate pressure to have everything looking perfect from not day one, but maybe month two. And it's just not realistic, and it's also not really sustainable because the costs can add up very quickly, and you kind of have to stagger them if you want to be financially responsible. So I wanted to pull up some statistics about the spending. I didn't find that much for Switzerland specifically, but the National Association of Home Builders, this is a US-based association, basically have estimated first year spend furniture at $7,300 US. Here in Switzerland, it would be much, much higher than that. And just with some quick AI research, they estimated that for a larger home, it would be between 35 to 75,000, depending on whether, you buy everything at IKEA or if you buy everything, at a more premium or luxury sort of rate. And the latter one was something that I wanted to look into, actually, because there's this really growing trend on social media to call all luxury purchases investments, and it really irks me. So I wanted to talk about it here and to just categorically rule that out right away. Furniture is not an investment. It is just not. Furniture is a depreciating physical good. Even if it's a designer piece, it just is not an investment if you're going to use it. And neither is anything that you use, for that matter. If you want physical goods as investments, they need to be unused and in completely pristine condition. And even though I'm talking about furniture here, I wanted to use this really widely cited example that's circulating around social media about the Hermes Birkin bag. I constantly see this on my Instagram feed that the Birkin bag is an investment. And so I wanted to look at the actual numbers, and let's pull them out on the screen to make sense of it all. So if in the year 2006, you invested into a classic Birkin bag, so nothing special, just the normal Birkin, that would have retailed at around $6,500. And today that Birkin could be worth anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000, which seems like you would have made a pretty decent profit, right? However, what the person, talking about this example about the Birkin as an investment isn't taking into account is that if you had invested that same amount of money, so in 2006, you invested $6,500 in the Hermes stock, today in 2026, that would be worth $169,000. So once you compare those numbers, it quickly starts falling apart, the entire argument about the Birkin being an investment. Now, many people would then counter my example with the fact that exotic leather Birkins can retail for a lot more than the classic Birkins, which is true, but you need a pretty substantial spending history at the store to even be offered that. So let's say that you wanted to be offered like an alligator or crocodile skin Birkin. You'd need around, let's put it at like $135,000 purchase history at Hermes to just be able to purchase that bag. And then the exotic Birkin back in 2006 would have cost you something like $45,000. And today that could sell for about $100,000, sometimes more. Sometimes up to $400,000. I've seen some examples like that if you look at some of the auctions. So that being rounded up. So let's say that you spent the $180,000 on the Birkin and the purchase history to get the Birkin. Let's say it retails for a couple $100,000. You would have made a pretty decent profit. But then, once again, let's look at if you put that $180,000 towards Hermes stock back in 2006. That would be worth $4.68 million today. So you really can't compare these investments. If someone is saying that these goods are investments, then they're very bad investments. Let's put it that way. The other thing to mention, just bringing it back to the relevance of furniture, is that physical goods are quite literally not liquid. It is very difficult to sell them. You can't just go into an app on your phone and quickly get your money back. It's quite difficult to sell them, especially for premium and designer furniture. You needs to be authenticated. You need to, like I mentioned before, you need to maintain it in completely pristine museum-like condition for it to retain the value at resale. So if you want to acquire something like that as an investment, then you should bear those things in mind. But I think to sum up on this point, it's better to approach putting together your home and furnishing your home from the point of view that it's not an investment and you need to spend responsibly on it. And you shouldn't ever go and spend beyond your means. You should still be able to save and invest during those months as well, which means that maybe you need to stagger those costs. Maybe you don't need to have everything ready from day one or month two, like I said. And the other point that has to do with this is also the fact that, and I've talked about this before on my channel, I think you need to understand the space and feel the space before you know what you need. And especially before jumping, or pulling the trigger on really expensive, larger purchases. You should understand the space. You should understand the lighting. You should understand how you use different spaces. And after that, you can then take those decisions along the way, little by little. And even if you do have the money, right, to responsibly drop, 75 grand into furniture from day one, do you want to do that? Aesthetically speaking, my experience is that when you buy everything at the same time, it kind of starts to look like a catalog. It doesn't look like you. It completely starts lacking individuality. It doesn't reflect things that you collect along the way. Something I like to do is when I travel, I go to shop and, go to different markets and things like that and try to collect really unique pieces that I love. And then there's also a story connected to that. And I think that's really what makes design special and unique. So it's not only to do with money, but then maybe the last point that I want to make about the investment aspect. So there are certain things to do with your home that can be viewed as an investment. For instance, when we moved in, our garden lacked any sort of privacy. So the month after we moved in, we immediately put up hedges because those take a while to grow. So it had to happen basically as soon as possible. But the other aspect to consider with regard to the hedges is that this can be recouped upon sale. So it becomes part of the value of the property. So basically it can be written off. And secondly, I shouldn't talk about Warren Buffett every single video, but I feel like he's a great one to mention when you're talking about being financially responsible. But in any case, Warren Buffett, I think, said that gardens are what sell homes. So investing in your garden is a very, very good idea because it has a lot to do with the resale price of your home. So I think those are my thoughts, and I would love to hear from you. So what do you think is like the limit? What would you feel comfortable with spending, or what have you spent after moving in to your home? I would love to hear what other people are spending because I only know my own example. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.